Morning everybody, welcome to the Growth and Regeneration Scrutiny meeting. Can I remind attendees that the meeting is being webcast and that all mobile phones be put on silent. Before we move on to the formal agenda, I'd like to do a round of introductions. So I am Councillor Zarina Amin, Chair of the committee.
Councillor Harry McCarthy, Councillor for Conn Valley Ward.
Councillor Tim Bamford, Denberdale Ward Councillor.
Councillor Donna Bellamy, Home Valley North Ward.
Councillor Alison Munro, Almonbury Ward.
Councillor Moses Crook, Home Valley South Ward.
Phil Jones, Service Director for Homes and Neighbourhoods.
David Shepherd, Executive Director for Place.
Julie Woodfine, Heat Network Manager for Homes and Neighbourhoods.
Thank you. Membership of the committee, I believe we have two apologies.
Yes, Chris Friend and Councillor Yusra Hussain.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. Can I ask panel members if you're happy to approve and second the minutes held on the 15th of December? Thank you. Declarations of interest. If any members have any interest to declare, please do so by filling in the relevant form. Admission of the public.
Yep, all agenda items are public.
Yeah, sorry. All agenda items are public. Deputations and petitions, Jenny, do we have any?
None received, Chair.
Public question time. Any questions from the public?
Again, none received.
So we just move on to agenda item 7, building safety compliance update. I'd like to invite the Cabinet member and officers to present the item. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. So this report to Scrutiny is to provide an update on our compliance with building safety regulations as a social landlord. It covers the big 6, which is fire, lifts, asbestos, water, electrical and gas safety, and also damp, mould and condensation, which along with electrical safety is now subject to new strict response times and standards as part of AWAB's law. This report provides information on our current performance and also areas we have identified where we can make improvements and how we will introduce these as part of our continuous programme of improvement. The report identifies how we provide assurance that we are meeting the requirements of both the Regulator of Social Housing and the Building Safety Regulator, and in particular we have successfully and totally transformed how we deal with damp, mould and condensation, which I've discussed at length in Scrutiny and in Council, but we do want to go further. Our housing service does not seek to reduce compliance into isolated regulatory standards, but also to move beyond regulatory compliance to ensure that tenant experience reflects our compliance and our commitment to continuous improvement. We need as a service to move to ensure that statutory compliance and assurance is our business as usual position so that we're able to focus on how tenant experience is delivered above compliance. Tenants need to feel warm, not just have assurance their gas supply is compliant. Tenants need to feel safe, not just have a certificate saying their fire door meets the required standard and so on. So I'm very pleased that we can provide assurance that we're getting this compliance layer right, and I will continue to focus on ensuring that our tenants feel and experience the progress we are making as a landlord and that they're comfortable and content in their homes as well as safe and secure. So I hand over to Phil if he wants to add anything now, and then very happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. I've nothing further to add in terms of the report, just noting the regulatory importance of this document and bringing it to the attention of the Scrutiny Committee is a key part of that.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Munro.
Thank you very much for this report. It's very reassuring, and it's good to see how well the Council is doing in relation to the status of projects around compliance. Just one question in relation to effective tenant engagement and data quality. I just wondered how the Council plans to go around ensuring it does receive good quality data, and whether that can be whether the new forums that are being set up could help with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor. There are, as we've reported previously to this committee, We are extremely focused on tenant engagement. It's an area of improvement for us. I think the two things I would flag, you're absolutely right to point out the tenant forums that happen in the north and south of Kirklees and the importance of those forums in terms of providing opportunity for our residents and tenants to share with us any concerns that they've got and seek redress to any repairs issues they've got relating to compliance. I think with regard to data quality, one of the key things I would point out is it's absolutely vital to us as a service that we understand who lives in our property. And that requires us to do regular work around tenant census to understand not only who the assigned tenant is, but also what family representation they've got in there and any particular issues they've got. Why that's key to us is if we're entering that property, we need to understand how best we can address those issues and manage the service around that. So it is critical. We are in the process at the moment of seeking a full tenant census. We've got some staff internally that are doing call-outs to tenants to understand vulnerability, and within the next 6 weeks we'll commission an external organisation that will help us to get a full picture of tenant census. So our ambition is within the next 6 months to have 80% data on our tenants.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Bellamy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Out of the 6 safety areas, which would you say currently presents the highest risk for tenants?
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy. I think, the report makes it clear, but I'm happy to kind of reinforce the point. Fire safety is our biggest area of risk at the moment, and it's our biggest area of focus. Without doubt, the work that we've done around understanding what we need to do, so the full compliance around fire risk assessments, 837 in total, plus around about 20 commercial risk assessments have been completed. Whilst that's good, that only gives us the information on what needs to be done, and the key challenge and risk for us now is getting through the fire actions that produces. So we're currently around about 3,500 outstanding fire actions, and we'll be seeking to reduce that down through a programme of works. And obviously where we can take the opportunity to accelerate to reduce that risk, we will do. What I would say that's important is we are in a position of risk, but as a service we've taken active steps to mitigate that risks to tenants particularly, and you'll notice over the next few weeks appearing on the council's website fire mitigation strategies for each of our medium rise blocks or 11 to 18 metre blocks, and they're very specific and individual to the property, so they give tenants information about what potential risks they face in that building, what we're planning to do about that and what the timescales will be, and what immediate action they need to take in order to remain safe. And to kind of reinforce that work, we'll also be visiting each of the properties and where possible taking West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service with us to undertake just safety and concern visits really. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to reinforce the part of that message from Phil around the mitigations to ensure that our tenants are not placed at risk. I mean, the assurance that we have on the mitigations in place, both internal and external, does just give us that level of confidence that we're not putting any of our tenants at risk, and the programmes that we've got underway to complete any remedial actions against the fire safety assessments that we've carried out on all of our stock and that are accelerating now do just give us an assured programme of work that will lead to completion of those outstanding works in due course. The factor there is that we need to manage the risk, which we are doing with mitigations in place, but also the disruption to tenants' lives. If we went in and invested more and took everyone's homes apart, then people wouldn't be able to live their lives as well. So you have to manage the cost effectiveness of the programme, the disruption to tenants and the risk, and we're doing that in a way which balances those three factors, I think well for our tenants. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you as well for the officers for the report. I've got two questions really. It mentions a lot in the report about access barriers, so accessing properties to kind of conduct work and investigations and so on, being a big barrier. Would you be able to outline what steps you're taking to kind of improve getting access to tenants' properties where possibly there's like a complex issue there that's preventing access? And secondly, you mentioned about water safety, that there's limited external assurance for that, but they are potentially looking at introducing that in the future. What mechanisms are currently in place so that tenants can be assured that their properties and others are made safe? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I'm more than happy to pick up both of those points. So in terms of access to properties, it is one of the biggest challenges we face. And usually it is where we fail to gain access, it is usually where there is a complex issue sat behind that door. It comes back to the point I made before about understanding tenant information and being really clear about who's living in properties. Substantial issues we face are things like hoarding. We occasionally see issues within our stock where people don't want to let us in because in doing so that would give away something that they don't want to be known, which could be some form of abuse or financial challenge issues, all of which we'd seek to pick up. We have a standard procedure in terms of how we access properties, which includes sending 3 letters. We will door knock. We would send housing officers around there who are known to the individuals. We also do have some powers of access through environmental protection in order to get access. So our access figures are generally quite low, and those are obviously reported in there below some of the sector averages, which it probably would have been helpful for us to include. But where we do face those issues, we've got a really clear approach to how we get in. I think probably within that question is a second question about what do you do when you do get in, and that's absolutely important in terms of how we respond where we do see complex issues emerging. Across the service, we ask, increasingly we're starting to ask our repairs operatives, if you identify a problem, you don't have to deal with the problem, but you do need to let us know, so they will flag it up. And then we would work that through with the relevant service. So in the example of domestic abuse, we wouldn't expect a repairs operative to deal with that, but we would expect them to report it, and then we would, through partner agencies, approach that family and see if we could provide some support to them post access being gained. In terms of your second point around water safety, we probably are as assured as we can be at the moment in terms of the work that we've done. So we've got, at present, it's around it's 99.96 something, I think, in terms of the overall physical assessment that we've had done. That has been undertaken by an external consultant. So that is as secure as we can be around water safety. We've got plans in place to visit the small number of residual units that aren't currently assessed on a physical basis, that have got desktop assessments in place. But clearly, there isn't a legal or statutory requirement for us to do that work, but I think it's fundamental to us as a service, having gone so far, that we complete that loop, and we would expect to do that probably within the next 6 to 12 months. It is important just to point out, though, it is a very low number of properties. We're talking less than 50 out of a stock holding of 21,500. That's a question.
Supplementary. Any additional questions?
Yeah, thanks for the report. Do we have any figures on how many fire events we do have? And do we know whether it's a problem with the fabric of our buildings or is it, tenant behaviour?
Apologies, Councillor, I missed the first part of that question. Was it fire events?
Yeah, fire events. How many fires do we get? Is it a common event, and is there a common theme going through the events?
Yeah, so in my time here, which is coming up for 8 months now, we haven't had a significant fire event, and we don't tend to see insignificant fire events in huge numbers either. We're talking probably less than 10. It doesn't tend to be a tenant issue, so it's not tenant behaviour. It can just be kind of one of the key factors is around combustibles left in communal areas. And you'll know the detail in the report doesn't perhaps go into this level of information, but that is one of our key areas of action under fire safety. So we, in terms of addressing that and trying to reduce that risk even further, we, as part of the fire risk assessments, we pick up all area combustibles within that kind of methodology. And we've implemented, over the last 12 months, a process where our caretakers will go in and check communal areas to make sure they remain clear and tidy. It's not 100% as you would imagine, nothing ever is with these processes, but it's significant steps towards managing that main risk, really.
Thanks, Chair. If I can just add to what Phil's saying,
It's really important to understand that the legislation requires us to ensure that the properties are safe. So the report here sets out what we've done in terms of inspections and what the remedial actions arising from those inspections are. As a landlord, same as all other social landlords, we have to put them right, irrespective of tenant behaviour. So we don't clearly we look at who the tenants are from a risk perspective in terms of the properties, but we have to ensure that those risks have been addressed in order that people are safe within the properties. In terms of fire events, we really don't get that many fire events. However, what we need to ensure is in the event that the property responds and the alarms and responses work in the way that we intend them to do. The last major one that we had was well over a year ago at Fernside Court, where we did have a fire within a flat, and thankfully emergency services responded, and thankfully there was no significant harm to people. There was an evacuation took place, and thankfully the alarm system worked, as did all the fire prevention measures to ensure that the fire was contained within one flat and didn't spread throughout the block. But we would never be complacent, hence why, as Phil said, and as Councillor Crook has said, we have an investment programme in place that responds to the risk assessments that have been undertaken, that we initially deal with any of the actions that we can do right now, but we also ensure that we have an investment programme over the next 2-3 years that ensures that all our properties not only are up to standard, but we maintain that standard moving forward.
Oh, thank you. That's reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? I just want to ask a question off the back of what Councillor Banthorpe has actually asked us. You say that to maintain that that standard. So how often do you envisage maintenance? Because from experience, some tenants will, for example, your smoke detectors, they'll unplug them from the mains. It's a fire risk in two respects. Obviously smoking in those rooms, and the other thing is the electrics as well. So how often is that seen to? And is there do we have like a database where we know that certain tenants may act like that, so we can then just keep those checks frequent?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a really good question, actually. So there's, in terms of our annual programme, we would undertake a fire risk assessment on any communal area annually, so within a 12-month cycle. The fire risk assessment will pick up any deactivated equipment or any issues that, again, the combustibles is generally the one that we would expect longer term to be returning to. I think in terms of specific of your question, though, around behaviours of tenants, what I would expect from a service director point of view is that as part of the regular checks and tenancy visits and caretaker visits into those blocks, they will be picking up those issues. And if it was a continuing behaviour, then you're absolutely right, we would flag that into the tenant vulnerability data set, and that would require more often, more frequent checking. It also, every property has to, every high-rise property and medium-rise property will have to have its own building risk assessment done, so that would form part of that process. So the system working as a whole should cover those issues, but it is a really important point because tenant behaviour, positive and negative, drives how well able we are to secure buildings around fire safety.
Thank you. So no more questions, then we move on to agenda item 8. Would you like to present the district heating update? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to provide an update on our district heating networks within homes and neighbourhoods following audit findings in 2024, which demonstrated we had not ensured full cost recovery in all cases, and as energy prices spiralled at that time or up to that time due to Putin's invasion of Ukraine and probably other international issues too. The report outlines the process and timeline for implementation of our new metering and billing contract and the process for setting bills towards ensuring cost recovery from April 2026, including proactive engagement with those tenants and leaseholders who are directly implicated. There is also An update on the new dedicated heat network manager post, which has been created to oversee these areas and appointed during Q3 and is here today. This role will oversee our district heat provisions and also develop future retrofit strategies to ensure these systems are as efficient as possible in future. And it's worth noting also that we've had success in winning additional funding to help in this move towards greater efficiency through an award of £37,000 from the Heat Network Efficiency Scheme. It's important where we run a district heating scheme that we maximise efficiency, both to reduce our collective carbon imprint towards our council commitments to being carbon neutral by 2038 and to ensure the lowest possible heating costs for our tenants. So that's all I'm going to say to introduce this. If you want to add, Phil.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of points for me. I think the key point I wanted to make was about the progression that the report presents in terms of dealing with some of the issues around the audit action in particular. But I think also making that point that it doesn't just stop there, as Councillor Crooks just referenced. We now need to look at what our next steps are around district heating. So the report presents a picture that demonstrates that we've moved forward with the actions that are required. But I think what I wanted to point out is the team want to kind of look at how we develop and modernise the system and make it more fit for purpose for our tenants, more affordable for our tenants. So I'll pause there and I'm more than happy to take questions.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Chair. So my first question is just briefly regarding the daily admin fee. I just wondered, will it be a similar level under the new provider? And then is there a shortfall forecast for 2025-2026? 3.22, there's an ongoing piece of work to establish the amount of money that has been recovered from leaseholders and residents. But I just wondered has that been resolved and what's been the problem in obtaining that information? Just finally, presumably there's likely to be an increase because energy costs have increased again, and obviously if there's a shortfall, then this will have to also be factored in. So is it likely there will be an increase under the new provider? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll pick up a few points, but I might call on my newly appointed colleague to help me answer some of the more detailed questions. So in terms of daily admin fee, I will let Julie pick that up in a second. In terms of how we approach charging and moving forward, so the switch to a new provider will have some positive benefit for tenants, but you're absolutely right, the volatility within energy markets at the moment sees an increase generally across the board, and that will be reflected back to the tenants. The whole point of the district heating approach was about making sure that people paid for what they used, and we will have to work through that with them. In a similar way, the residual balances that come from this year and the changes, it's very similar to how we all pay our energy bills, where you may pay a little bit up front, you may not, and at the end of the year there's a reconciliation process happens. So again, we'll work through that with our tenants and ensure that we're able to deliver that in an affordable way over the next 12 months. And I would expect that process will continue in some shape or form for some time. I think the report does refer to moving towards quarterly reconciliation. That's one of the benefits of the switch to the new provider, that will be able to be much more on time and accurate for our tenants with information.
Good.
Julie, do you just want to pick up the daily rate question?
Hi, yes, the daily standing charge is likely to be quite similar under a new provider. It's at the moment the standing charge is set by Switch 2, so our current provider, and it just covers their fee for having their meters in. So under the new provider it will be the same cost. It will be for the having that meter in there and having a database so that we can see what people are paying and see their details on that database. So it's likely to be very similar. Through the procurement process we have looked at the costs. They've provided sort of an estimate of costs on there, and they are very similar across the board from all the people that bidded in the tender.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Any further questions, Councillor Munro?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Do you want to just... Thank you. Were any additional questions? Right, looks like we're all done. So next agenda item is... Oh, apologies.
Well, I was only just going to expand ever so slightly on the answers that had already been given to Councillor Munro. I mean, the reconciliation of costs and exposure of our tenants to fluctuations in energy costs is just the same as all of us experience through our supplier. And I think what we would need to do is ensure as a social landlord that we had a proper process in place to reflect changes in the energy price that we were paying. There's absolutely no intention to ever make a profit out of tenants. That is absolutely not the aim here, but it is right that other tenants are not subsidising the energy costs for a small number of tenants because of a process failure, and I think that's what the audit report had picked up. So I think it's also worth noting that district systems will typically have lower costs for tenants because a district system has greater opportunity for efficiency, and that those efficiencies are passed on, and also that tenants don't have the burden of maintaining an individual boiler in their flat, so there's another saving there as well. So we would seek to pass on savings to tenants, but also to maximise the efficiency of these systems over time, and hopefully move towards lower carbon systems when these systems become due for replacement. So you might look at district heat pump systems, for example, and then there'd be additional benefits passed on to tenants there as well. So there is great opportunity in these schemes. We just need to get the process right. But unfortunately, as you pointed out, there will be a change in the cost to some tenants who've been underpaying for their energy, and where that burden is felt to be possibly difficult for tenants, we've worked to soften the impact of that so that they don't experience a sudden change in the burden of their heating costs.
Thank you. Right. We're just going to call a 5-minute break. We're just waiting for officers to come down for the next agenda item. Thank you. Thank you. Apologies for the break. We now will be going on to agenda item 9, Mass Transit Spatial Development Framework Development Plan Document Update. Would Councillor Crook like to present, and officers? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to provide an update to Scrutiny on progress in development of the Joint Mass Transit Spatial Development Framework Development Plan document. The process here is quite complicated, but members will recall that both Cabinet and Council have approved the delegation of constitutional powers to approve both the Regulation 18 and the Regulation 19 consultation drafts at a West Yorkshire Combined Authority hosted joint member committee. I'm the member who holds this delegated authority, and I attended the first session of that committee on Friday last week, where we approved the near final draft for Regulation 18 consultation. This draft has been shared with all members across Kirklees already. It's worth reminding committee that this process towards a joint development plan document does have really important implications for spatial planning beyond mass transit, and that our engagement and involvement is also a form of lobbying for investment into our region. Powers to influence spatial planning on a regional level, powers which will carry equal weight to our own spatial development framework, our local plan Mark II, and for the next 25 years, for mass transit, but also for housing and for economic investment, will clearly impact our development in Kirklees. And I'm extremely keen we use this process to maximise the benefit to our borough through all future opportunities, including but not limited to investment around mass transit. For example, as funding associated with the government's social and affordable housing programme is distributed to develop the social homes we so desperately need in Kirklees, and to complement our success in bidding into funding to build capacity to deliver in this area, with £300,000 won from Homes England and a further £240,000 added from the Homes and Neighbourhoods Housing Revenue account, we will be very well placed to deliver social and affordable housing at scale in Kirklees, and so aligning this need and aspiration with regional development priorities will be key. So that's all I wanted to say about this, and I'll hand over to Matthias. Did you want to say some more, or Elaine? Yeah, and then happy to answer questions, obviously.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. Elaine will take you through the substantive points. We've got to work at significant pace to make sure we keep up with our combined authority colleagues and our partners across the region as we work towards this development plan document. At the moment, it's in its early stages, as Councillor Crooks alluded to. There's quite a bit of technical work to do. This early stage that's out for consultation will shape what the document looks like in the future. There will be further consultations, as Councillor Crooks said, around Regulation 18/19, which is the actual draft document before it goes to examination. It shows our commitment towards the region's aspiration for a mass transit system, and we're very positive that in the future this should be a helpful planning tool that allows decision makers to bring investment into our district, and if the council is minded to progress further development plan documents for routes and alignments of different options of transport into our district from mass transit, this is the first document that you need to be able to shape that in the future. So that's probably where we're up to. Elaine, do you want to talk about the specifics of consultation?
Yep, thanks Matthias. Okay, yeah, so in terms of specifics of the consultation, we're looking to get the consultation this Thursday, the 29th of January, for a statutory minimum period of 6 weeks, which is in compliance with our Statement of Community Involvement, which be aware is what we have to comply with for all development plan documents. So the consultation period will end on the 12th of March, which is a 6-week period. We will then be working with district partners to review comments on the Regulation 18 consultation between March and June. And we'll look to go out to consultation on the Regulation 19 document, which will include a suite of policies in August this year, with submission for examination at the back end of this year, probably October, and then with adoption spring 2027. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from members? Councillor Munro.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I've just wondered, I've read through the report and the questions that are going to proposed to be asked. I believe the information that's given is too vague for the public to be able to comment and in any meaningful way. The maps are vague. I understand perhaps the reason for that, but I do feel that there's insufficient information, for example, and again, how can the public be expected to comment on this question? Question 1, how will guiding spatial planning principles maximise the benefits of the investment? What are the benefits? What are the guiding principles? And then again, in Chapter 2, Vision, a new public transport option provides an alternative to car travel, but you don't state what it is. So I feel that I think you're just not providing sufficient information for people to actually, as I say, comment in a meaningful way. Would you like to respond, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Munro. It's a balance at the moment between early engagement, which is asking people their opinions on the proposals, having a very high-level strategy, and then getting their comments back. Comments that you've made about lack of information are perfectly reasonable responses, Councillor Munro, to the consultation. That helps inform it. We do need to be clear that this development plan document is simply the starting point of the ambition, the vision. It doesn't include routes. It doesn't include the details of where and what type of transport system we would get. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about a tram, as you can imagine, and a tram is very desirable on the first phase between Leeds and Bradford. If that's what we get in the end, then that's great. If it's a different form of mass transit arrangement, that could be suitable as well. So we haven't got the answers on the detail yet, because it is around setting the scene, agreeing a regional commitment to the project, and then shaping what comes back in the consultation responses this time when we go forward into a draft plan document. But I do need to manage expectations. It is very much a high-level vision intended document as opposed to details of routes and alignment, which would come in a subsequent development plan document, which other councils may progress ahead of ours, because they're more, they need to move quicker because they're in earlier phases. I hope that helps.
Supplementary.
Yeah, thank you. Well, in that case, it does come across as simply a box-ticking exercise in that case. I do feel that you saying you want that it's intended to be high level, but to me, if I was a member of the public, it would come across as something that you're asking me to respond to something I don't really understand. So this must be a box-ticking exercise. Sorry.
I mean, I absolutely share your frustration at the lack of clarity about what this is aimed to achieve, and it's a functional part of the process. It is about there being the capacity on a regional level for us to guide investment that would be compliant with a future potential mass transit network. So it is by its very nature quite vague in that sense, but there is other detail for those members of the public who are specifically interested in our future mass transit network and in transport across the region. There are other ways for them to engage in that through the consultations around mass transit or tram, and through current, past and future consultations on different stages of this process. I think it's the way that I like to think about it, as I alluded to in my introduction, is that what we're really doing is ensuring that we're part of the conversation about how the major investment into the region over a long period of time associated with future mass transit systems is delivered in our area, in our district, and it is really important that we're part of that conversation and that we maximise the benefit, albeit that it seems a little ephemeral at the moment, that we maximise that benefit to benefit our residents. So that's how I sort of understand it. But it may be that it's quite difficult to get meaningful and numbers of responses from the public to these early stages. Yeah.
Can I just come back to that, Chair? I think that's what you've just said is more reassuring. I mean, I'm just wondering if that could be added into the introduction in the blurb, in the lead up to the actual questions. It's just it gives it more, it makes it more relevant, I think, to people.
Yeah, I think that the wording for the Regulation 18 draft or the consultation document is pretty much set now. That's been worked on behind the scenes by, you know, expert planning officers across the region, and members such as myself have also had input into shaping how that looks in ways that we feel is important for our local priorities. As we get to the actual consultation, it's probably quite useful that we do have some wraparound explanation, and it may very well be along the lines that you suggest, yeah, but I think that's probably something more for Matthias to answer or Elaine to.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair. So I think, firstly, I mean, I don't know if you thought of a snappier title than West Yorkshire Mass Transit Spatial Development Framework Joint Development Plan Document, which abbreviates to YWMTSDFJDPD, which maybe like a bit of a snappier thing might be a bit better. I guess my first question would be, I guess I'm a bit confused about how this relates to local plans in particular. If it says in the document that this would kind of be almost on an equal footing in a way, but I guess what confuses me, what if there's a contradiction between the two? Which one plays out, or does that play out in the planning process? Is that for the committee or the officers to decide upon? I'm not necessarily disagreeing over anything in the document, but yeah, it is a bit confusing as to how you'd resolve those contradictions, because at the moment there potentially is a conflict between those two. So yeah, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Thank you for the question. Can't do much about the title, I'm afraid, because that is what it is. In terms of the structure of a development plan document, that is a legal part of our local plan system. So if you imagine it's an umbrella term, a local plan, and within that we have our local plan document. Alongside that you would have development plan documents. They have the same effect and weight in decision making. As an example, we have a development plan document in our neighbourhood plan foot terms. The Home Valley neighbourhood plan is a development plan document. It forms part of our local plan. So when we make decisions on planning applications, we would refer to what the local plan says about that project or scheme, and also what else the development plan document says. In terms of consistency, we would make sure that as we're drafting it, we're aligning our ambition with the current local plan, what it currently delivers, and as we work into our new local plan that we're making progress on now, that will shape and reflect the mass transit objectives, because the timetable for mass transit is likely to be adopted back end of next year if everything goes to plan. Our local plan 2, which we're currently working on, will be a year or so behind that, and therefore the development plan mass transit will be able to feed into our new local plan. So it should all align. And in terms of what the content of this development plan does, it sets a vision. So it doesn't identify sites for routes, it doesn't identify locations for development, it doesn't identify where a tram hub or a mass transit scheme would be located. So the reality is decision making shouldn't be significantly adversely affected. It should support investment because it brings in the opportunity for modal shift and opportunities for people and businesses to benefit should we get this development in our future, a mass transit scheme. But it's vision based at the moment. So I hope that gives you some comfort that the synergy between where the current local plan is, the new one, and how this development plan document fits in is well in our optic. We're very cognizant of making sure it's legible and interrelated as we go forward into new plan making. Bit techie, but I hope that's helpful.
I just wanted to add very quickly, I mean, we can't do anything about the name. I think it's, I've got quite accustomed to them, quite enjoying it now. I noticed that West Yorkshire Combined Authority have moved the word joint from the beginning to the middle now. That's quite exciting in that process. But I just wanted to talk about, you mentioned the possibility of conflict between our local plan or the regional plans or the spatial development strategy from Wicker. I think this process is about ensuring that they're co-supportive pieces of structure so that we ensure that the local and regional priorities all work together to give maximum benefit for all of us across West Yorkshire and to support our shared prosperity. So it isn't about competing priorities, it's about making sure those priorities work together, and that's why it's so important this process is carried through properly and leads to an outcome that we're all comfortable will be to all of our benefit. Yeah.
Thank you. That's really helpful response. Thank you. So I guess my supplementary question would be, I think with the best hope in the world, I think Kirklees will perform part of the later stages of the mass transit programme, but there are parts of our district that are going to benefit from investment in public transport much sooner, hopefully. And in particular, I'm thinking about the transparent route upgrade. Now, I appreciate there's a separate planning process for that, for the Transport and Works Act order, but I don't know how this policy in particular would align with the transparent route upgrade and other transport projects like the Weaver Network, for example, because my ward, for example, it benefits a lot from the TRU, but we still need to integrate our public transport improvements with what's happening with the mass transit programme. So yeah, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that. Thank you.
You'll be aware we've been developing as part of the local plan, but as a standalone document, a transport strategy for our district, which is well advanced, and I think it's adopted now. And that's also integrated with the regional transport plan that they're updating at the combined authority, the local transport plan for. So how those pieces of infrastructure, heavy rail, light rail and mass transit, and then bus as well, all fit together, that will all shape from those transport strategies. Maximising the benefits of investment in our district is the key outcome. That's what the planning system's here to facilitate. So documents like a development plan document for mass transit put a lens on Kirklees that we're part of the conversation, looking for the future and seeing if we're going to have investment into our northern part of our district in the earlier phases. You identified we're not phase 1, that's Leeds and Bradford, but we're spoken about as phase 1A, the next opportunity, which could bring development towards the north of the district, Chidswell and Dewsbury, and then beyond that, there's still a lot of uncertainty. We're doing some work at the moment, a technical piece of work at looking at how the economics and the development opportunities could come forward into North Kirklees, and that's helping to inform our understanding of whether we can progress mass transit in the future through a second development plan document with routes and options, and that piece of work's been funded through the combined authority. So that synergy is taking place, very much a localised example there in North Kirklees, but the transport strategy and the future local plan should be able to tie in the opportunities for growth around those transport corridors. And you'll probably have seen in the news the updates to the National Planning Policy Framework the government's consulting on very much encourage higher density, presumption in principle of approving developments near to well-served transport interchanges like good train stations like on the on the TRU route. So you can see the shift is very much around, if you've got transport, you should encourage good quality development and high density wherever possible along those corridors. And obviously we've got our housing challenges in Kirklees, so the opportunities are there to meet our housing need, bring investment in, and hopefully in the future have more certainty around mass transit for our north part of our district to start with. And then there is a wider vision that it goes everywhere across West Yorkshire. Hope that helps.
Councillor Bamford.
Yeah, thanks for the report. How do we safeguard land for the mass transit network if we don't really have a route, if we don't know where it's going to go, and then you've got the knock-on of investment if they don't know where the mass transit network's going to be. I know it's all further down the line, but basically my first question is, how do we safeguard that land within the local plan if we haven't got a route, or have we got a route thought about.
WICA, when they first mooted the mass transit scheme for the region, produced a very broad, it looked like a London Underground map, and it had identified areas of settlements that the mass transit would go to. There isn't routes beyond that, and they're still working very much around Route 1, Phase 1, which is the Leeds to Bradford corridor, and they're working up the options that they'll be consulting on in the summer this year. So, to answer your question, no, there isn't a confirmed set of routes by any stretch. Feasibility options are being explored, as you would anticipate, and that's good practice. I mentioned the development project we talked about in North Kirklees in my previous answer. That is looking broadly at what is the realistic alignments that could accommodate mass transit. But there's some uncertainty. We haven't decided, is it a tram for us or a different set of route transport options like guided buses or anything, for example. So that's still being discussed. In terms of safeguarding routes, you can do that as part of a local plan process when you allocate land, like you would allocate land for housing or job sites. If the evidence base tells you you have a confirmed scheme, which at the minute it doesn't because we're still working the feasibility, but you can safeguard land corridors to protect routes, and many authorities have done that in the past. If our timetable for the development plan document we're working on now goes through as planned, and if the council commits to going forward with a future development plan document for routes, then those two pieces of work could dovetail with the emerging local plan in the future. And if it all came together, you could have, in the new local plan we're working on, protected routes. But there's a lot of ifs. You need certainty about the route through Kirklees and the funding to deliver it, and then you start to have a logical justification for saying somebody's land is protected for a future mass transit corridor. So we're still some way off that. So the reality is we don't have protected sites or routes yet because we don't know where they'll be and what land will be needed, what type of mass transit it would be. They're all questions that we're grappling with and engaging across the region at the moment. Some way off having answers to that, I'm afraid. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. My worry is that we lock a load of land up and, you know, we can't develop it because we're going to get this transit network, but we don't know when. So, yeah, that's all I'm worried about.
Yeah. I mean, most transport corridors, you know about their main roads that run through boroughs, and highway land is usually where you will cite a lot of these corridors, or you'd use green former railway routes, for example. I'm not saying we will, but those types of options. Large-scale land sort of designation is minor. It's normally an expansion to the highway so that you can fit another transport system down it, but we haven't got an answer to say that's happening yet.
Thank you.
Just to add to that very, very slightly, I mean, I recognise your concern that there's potentially an issue where you might lock land up and fail to develop it. I think that the situation we're in at the moment is more that we want to attract more investment, that we, you know, the trouble is not land, the trouble is getting investment into the region to develop it. So actually using this process to maximise and increase investment in is more likely the outcome that we're aiming for, rather than it being a frustration to us developing land that we're already trying to develop. So I take your point, but I think the onus is on us the other way round to try and pull more investment in, and this is a tool we can use to try and benefit ourselves in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I realise it's early days and just looking further down the line. Thank you very much.
Any additional questions? I just have one question with regards to the DPD, joint DPD objectives. I can see the link between housing, the built heritage, obviously the transport network, and even the environment implications, but the link to the economic, it's quite weak. So, I mean, have we looked at that?
You're right to identify all the factors we want the benefits of mass transit to come at. we are looking at the economic benefits, and a lot of the benefits of doing the first development plan document we're here to talk about is it will strengthen the business case to government for funding, and some of that is around how many customers are going to use the new system, what job opportunities could arise from creating a workforce that can get to different parts of borough, and therefore you've got different sites that could come forward. All of that needs to be worked through, and that evidence base is being explored at combined authority level. So we haven't got the answers at the minute, but generally speaking, as part of a justification to get funding for schemes, you have to demonstrate that it's financially worth doing, but you can also benefit from housing growth and helping your environment, helping you to meet your climate change ambitions. So it's a piece of work that's ongoing, Chair.
I think my frustration is that if, say, for example, we want to bring businesses into the region, they're going to look at these objectives and they're going to think, well, where do we fit in? Because the economic benefits are weak. And I think that's the issue. You're saying you want to build a business case, but in order to do that, we need a bit more stronger objective in there. So I just think, personally, I feel that we need to kind of emphasise that a little bit more rather than just leave it where it is.
Happy to take that back to feedback to combined authority colleagues and partners. As you can imagine, we have our economic strategy at Kirklees that we're refreshing also as part of our local plan. The Mayor has their economic and growth plans, and all of those have some objectives around trying to encourage mass transit in. So there's a synergy across all the strategies of the regional tier and our local tiers, and it's knitting it together to make the strongest case into Whitehall to secure funding, and particularly for future phases beyond the first Leeds-Bradford corridor that's proposed. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to identify a sort of a related point, which is around, because obviously we're keen to maximise investment into our region, both for housing growth and for economic growth, as you've identified. But within our transport strategy in particular, we also identify the need for inclusive growth. So we need our transport to connect our communities to employment opportunities that already exist, as well as developing new employment opportunities. And that's about the kind of the principled advantage of creating not just a more prosperous but also a more equal West Yorkshire where everyone is taken with us. And so that's an important part for me of our transport growth, as well as our attracting further investment per se. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. If there's no further questions, then I can close the meeting. Thank you, officers, and Councillor Crook, for your presentations. Thank you, everybody. The next meeting will be on the Monday, the 9th of March. Thank you.